tänne maahan kotoa kun lähettiin ja äijille hyvästi jätettiin, niin vettä sitä tuli silloin silmistä, melkein kuin ukkosen pilvistä. Huomen aamulla oltiin Hangon niemellä, huostettiin myös saavon kielellä, vaikka enkelisko olisi jo osannut, niin eipä tuohon kukaan vastannut. Itämerku se ylpeästi lainehtii ja Arturus meitä jo tuuitti. Kotrantomio laivassa kaatottiin, kun majakasta valkeeta näytettiin. Merkippeitä alkoi jo olemaan ja minä kun ruppee jo tuulemaan. Eväsputelista otin vuotuikkuja ja päälle söi suolaisia muikkuja. Sitten kun oltiin myö hullissa ja lävite päästiin myö tullista, niin masinalla mua ylmyö ajettiin ja liiperpolli myö suavuttiin. Tuos laivo kun mäntiin myö kahtoomaa, entistä pidempö ja äikempö, niin oikein se silloin hirvitti, kun viimeisen kerran se huuatti. Tähet kun ne tuikkii taivaalla, oltiin tuos Atlannin uovalla, allallini ja laivalla. Myrsky se käy ja muota ei näy, mut kun Neuvorkin ranta alkoi lähetä, kot eväs minun pussistani vähetä. Oli ihan niinku uudesti syntynä oes, kun pääs sieltä Atlannin myrskyistä pois. Amerikkoe meitä tänne tuotiin ja mainissa multo myö luotiin. Piälysmiestä siellä ei tarvittu, mua ennen oli toisia jo otettu. Mutta sitten kun mänti meistä kämpille, savon kielikin kuulosti jo jänkille. Kun porilainen alkoi siellä soveltaa ja savolainen piältä vaan komentaa.
Nobody does it better than the Capian Finns. Nobody in this town, well, okay, so because I'm Finnish today, nobody in this town does it better, preserves your history and your heritage better than the Finns. But there's another group that does a pretty good job, and those are the Italians and the Sicilians, particularly from down the fort. And so what we've done, we're a small fledgling group. That's an invitation for anybody who's interested. Our first project was the Branded Aliens project, and some of you here in the audience were right in this room for us when we did that. Mia Miller-Follier is putting together a project. We're working on a documentary on branded aliens during World War II when the Italians, particularly on the West Coast and the East Coast, were interred because they were considered enemies of the government, enemies of the state. And so we're in the process of gathering in Gloucester, and we've found some on the East Coast beyond Gloucester. People who were interred, families that were impacted. As Mia says, around one table and in a Sicilian home, you'd have aliens and you'd have Americans. So there'd be enemies with each other, considered that. Some would go off to war, some would go to an internment camp from the same family. And that happened right here in Gloucester. If anybody's interested in developing a project, in support with us, just being part of the group or learning more, feel free. And we're really thrilled that Wayne and Rob and Susie have invited us to consider this our second project as part of being a Capian Finn. So thank you very much.
Capian Finns was organized in 2017, so we're still a young group too. And the primary purpose was to capture the culture and the heritage of the Capian Finns. Why? Because people sitting up here and in the audience, many of us walked among the Finns, grandparents, parents, And so we're the last group to be able to record anything about Cape Ann. It's interesting that the communities throughout America have a much larger population, so there's a lot been written down and recorded. But our Cape Ann Finns, I guess, adopted the quality of being silent, not saying too much. And if they did, it was in Finnish, so no one else would understand. Yeah.
What's the Finnish baptism? What is a Finnish baptism?
What is it?
A Finnish baptism is when the priest or the minister comes out and says to the baby, "You have a right to remain silent." Go ahead.
So anyway, how many of you have some Finnish blood in you here? Okay.
Yes. All right.
Great. Good number.
And how many wish they did?
Yeah.
I'll let you know when you're done.
Okay. Cape Ann Finns welcomes everybody. We welcome, and believe it or not, there are some people who are Finnish, but they may have a quarter, even less, and so they never thought of themselves as Finnish. But this is a wonderful place and a wonderful group to learn about that heritage. And I think when you get to a certain age, there is an interest, and we'd like to get that message out. The other thing is we do accept what we call galvanized Finns. And galvanized Finns are those whose partner or spouse might be Finnish, or those who just have an interest in the Finnish heritage, the Finnish history, and Finns here on Cape Ann. So capeannfinns.com is the place for you to go if you'd like to join up. You don't have to do a whole lot. The first year is free, and then we charge so much the second year, $10 for each household. Okay. So thanks for listening, and I hope that you will enjoy our presentation today.
So thank you, Rob, Wayne. And I also, I want to give a shout out to the Sawyer Free Library, because it's because of their digitizing of the newspapers that I find myself in this pickle of being up here, because I've gotten really addicted to reading the old newspapers. So we find all this fabulous stuff about, Finns and the early community. So jumping off from Rob's recounting of the decade leading up to 1900, the Finns moved quickly to create societies and institutions that they were familiar with. So what they were doing here was they were recreating what they'd had back in Finland. Social halls, temperance societies, the church, political parties and working associations, and of course, saunas. You're looking at me like you're worried. Can you hear me? I'm looking at my husband. Okay. The creation of these institutions kept them living in parallel with their Yankee counterparts for some time before assimilation really began. The temperance societies, already mentioned by Rob, counteracted the bad and fearsome reputation wrought by drunken Finns. And you may have noticed I skipped out, and it was because I forgot to bring, this is only the sheath for a Finnish knife. This is a puukko, Puukko, puukko. And the men would wear them on their belts. So you can imagine, it must have been pretty scary when you ran into a drunken Finn who might have been wearing his puukko. The temperance societies offered way more than admonitions about not drinking. They were the lifeblood of the villages. There were athletics, plays, dances, lectures, conferences, and music. In Lanesville, these activities took place at Wainola Hall, built in 1900. And this hall was to become the heart of the Finnish community over the following 45 years. The temperance societies were noted and commended in the larger Cape Ann community. The Gloucester Daily Times reported in 1900 that great work was going on among the Finns in Rockport, Pigeon Cove, and Lanesville, and that more than 600 total abstainers were enrolled in the temperance societies. An observer opined, "These are noble strangers in our midst. They are intelligent, honest, industrious, and devout adherents of the Lutheran Church." And in the workplace, Finns were gaining respect, both men in the quarries and women who worked as domestic servants. Very often an advertisement for a domestic servant would specify Finnish girl wanted. The improvement in attitude toward the Finns can be seen in this item from the social pages of the Gloucester Daily Times, albeit with a little bit of a complaint attached. July 13th, 1900. Some years ago, we had a different class of Finn population than the present, who exhibited no apparent desire to advance or to conform to American customs. Today, this has all changed, and their progress and adaptability can be seen on every side. And to these, the suggestion that it is not pleasing to the majority of persons in the village, nor customary to indulge in ball games in the field on Langsford Street on Sunday, will probably be all that is needed to cause a cessation of the Sabbath break-in. Here's a later complaint on the same subject. January 15th, 1901. The coasting is excellent, and young people are enjoying it to the utmost. Some of the foreign element keeps it up on certain streets all through Sunday. As I was scanning the social pages, I noticed that in the first decade of the 20th century, references to Finns are usually anonymous. They're either under large social events, such as meetings, or they are reports that an unnamed Finn had been injured in a quarry accident. This begins to change in the next decade. By the 1910s, Finnish names are appearing in the social pages with increasing frequency. Yankee society and the Finnish newcomers were not completely separate. Overtures came from both sides. For example, in 1900, both Swedes and Finns in Rockport were invited to meetings about a proposed hospital. I find it interesting that the town fathers felt it was important to give information to the immigrant population and gain their support. And relatively quickly, it became apparent to the newcomers that they would need to get educated about their new home. As a result of a petition from about 40 Finns, the city of Gloucester responded to a request for adult education in the English language and American civics. January 11th, 1901. It is evident that the Finnish people on the back of the Cape are not only anxious to become good American citizens, but are eager to embrace the advantages of our system of schools. Gloucester, always liberal on the side of education, has heeded their petition, and Thursday evening saw the inception of probably the first entirely Finnish school in the New World, a truly 20th century innovation. The first session was held on January 10th, 1901, with 87 present on the opening night. The total attendance during the term was 192, 159 men and 33 women. Adult education for Americanization went on for 30 years, into the early 1930s. And children were crowding the schools. April 12th, 1901. The crowded condition of the primary department of the Lane School is much to be deplored. Some 25 pupils having to be crowded with other grades than their own, and in addition to this, the hallway being utilized as a recitation room. Wainola Hall was used as an annex for years for the 5th grade students, and Lane School itself had to have an addition built to house the influx. For most of the Finnish children, they first learned English when they entered 1st grade. That was my father's experience in 1921. His family had already been there for 20 years, and still the kids were arriving at school not speaking any English. You can imagine what it must have been like for the teachers. My Lord God. I remember my father talking about the church Finns, aka the white Finns, and the red Finns. There were more church Finns than red Finns, and of the red Finns, the vast majority were socialists, along with a handful of communists. Politics for the Finns reflected what was going on back in the homeland. Things in Finland were coming to a head in those first decades, finally resulting in the Finnish Civil War, which lasted just a short time from January to May of 1918, and ended with the socialist Finns being crushed. My grandfather, Erkki Nädi, was a church Finn, but had a brother, August, who was a red Finn. August came to Gloucester in the 1890s, but returned to Finland where he fought on the side of the Reds in the Civil War. Back here on Cape Ann, there was a socialist club in Lanesville and a Swedish socialist club in Rockport. I'm calling these clubs because that is how they are generally referred to in the paper. They operated as social organizations as much as they were political organizations, analogous to the temperance societies. The Socialist Club in 1910 had 50 members. They raised money, built a hall at the foot of Tucker Street, and just as at the Wainola Hall, there was an abundance of activities: music, plays, dances, lectures, and of course, a band. After the hall burned down a few years after it was built, the club found a new home in the building that is now St. Paul's Lutheran Church. It was called New Hall. By the 1920s, socialist membership was down and stopped being a significant force. Unfortunately, rifts that had formed between the Church Finns and the Red Finns lingered through the second generation. There was also a Lanesville branch of the Quarry Workers International Union of America. The union was not explicitly socialist, but many members were socialist. Two really strong threads of community life for the Finns on Cape Ann were athletics and music. These brought people together both by participation and as audience members. In Lanesville, there were two bands: the Waino Band, associated with the Temperance Society and Wainola Hall, and the Levo Band, associated with the Finnish Workingmen's Party. There were frequent musical events. There are stories that the Waino Band rode on the trolley all around the Cape and performed at stops. Norseman Avenue was crowded with Finnish families, jam-packed into just 5 or 6 houses with multiple households. I think it might have been Fred Sari who reminisced about Norseman Avenue, that music was often heard being practiced and that the blaring of various musical instruments was a regular part of the soundscape. In my family, both my Uncle Eno and my father Robert played brass instruments: trumpet, trombone, and baritone. John Coggeshall, a painter who ran an art camp on the Lanesville shore, initiated the very first Boy Scout troop in Gloucester in 1914. He got 40 boys between the ages of 12 and 18 to sign up. And what I found interesting was that all 10 of the leaders of the 5 patrols were either Finnish or Swedish. Not surprisingly, 18 of the boys were musicians, and Troop Coggeshall formed a band. And finally, Finns and the artists. There were a number of artists in Lanesville, especially in the Folly Cove area. One of the Seppulas of Folly Cove, Albert, his family had one of the well-known saunas that was public, worked for Gabriel DeVoe Clements as a gardener. Eili Runsula of the Runsula family, also in Folly Cove, spent much of her lifetime working for George and Jenny Demetrius, and Finns were models for countless works of art. The sculptor Charles Grafley played an interesting role in the eventual marriage of Walker Hancock to Simon Natty. The story goes like this. Walker was a student of Charles Grafley's at the Philadelphia Academy of the Arts. Grafley had invited him to visit his summer studio in Folly Cove, and as Walker recounts, he traveled to Cape Ann and then, being somewhat shy and uncertain, couldn't bring himself to actually knock on Grafley's door. He'd been directed to Grafley's home by 2 young Finnish men, Albert Seppala and Waino Natty. Walker and Waino became fast friends, and Walker spent many an evening at the Natty homestead, crowded around the supper table with any number of family members. There were 12 children in the family. He fell in love with the Finns. He mastered many Finnish songs, and then he fell in love with one particular Finn, Saima, whom he married in 1943. And with that, I close.
Cape Ann Finns were first recognized in the 1870 census. If they were alive today, they'd be the oldest people in the world.
That's right.
I'm going to be the archaeologist, all right? We put the archaeologist, archaeologists come so advanced and far that now today an archaeologist can probe through the depths and with the earphones on can detect from way back many hundred years the sounds. He's trying to get to the sounds of the Finns. He's going through the 30s, down the 20s, he's going further. Finally in 1870, complete silence. That's the Finns. He's got but no, almost complete silence. Somebody hit their hand with a hammer and it's Satana bed killer. We know that. And the, well, keep listening. The accordion. Da, 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 da. Yes, the accordion. Okay, and then there's a man's voice. He's in the cemetery. He's saying, he was a good wife, such a good wife. Once I almost told her that I loved her. That's the Finns for you. Let's go off. We have, I always like it when the third grader asked the teacher questions, and they said, one of them was, you know, you can write a letter to God, and the third graders were all able to write a letter to God. They wrote the letter. One wrote, "Dear God, did you create giraffes that way, or was it an accident?" And I'm thinking, did you create Finns that way, or was it an accident? We're sort of strange and different. In 1860, the 1860 census, just off the chart, the 1860 census had 12 Finns in America. The 1860 census, 12 Finns. 12 Finns, and one of them was in Newburyport. So he might have come to Gloucester because it was free parking and it was easy there. But in 1870, there were 12 families, and you researched this too, you saw it. 12 families, married couples with children, not all with children, but married couples. The image we have from later decades is single men coming from Finland, working and sometimes going back to Finland or marrying here. No, in 1870 the group was these 12 households, 12 families, and they were families. It was couples and sometimes with children. And they were all around Lanes Cove. And I want to tell you why they came here. I can't, because nobody knows. They were fishermen and farmers, but you could fish and farm almost anywhere. And somehow, and there was no church, no Finn church here at the time. There was no Finnish-speaking stores, no socialist hall, no lending library for working men, no unions at the quarry, nothing that would say, why did you come to Lanes Cove? But we kind of know, in our hearts, I guess, that these Finns were, as the stereotype goes, at least I think, quiet, stoic, honest, hardworking, sexy, and courageous. And what?
In a quiet way.
In a Finnish way. And they had a high threshold of pain. Sisu and Nisu is basically that, right? Sisu and Nisu. Why I want to dwell on the next decade, I'll cover the 1870s and then the 1880s. Why I want to do the 1880s more is because it's better light. There's very little on 1870s about Finns. We looked it up in the Capian Breeze, which through this library you can do it online. And if you plug in Finn, it'll identify which articles came up about Finn. Sometimes it's Finland because they call them Finlanders or something from Finland. And I had one Finn that actually made the papers. I mean, we already talked about the census that around Lanes Cove. There was an S.H. Emanuel, which I take it was a Jewish Finn. The first one to break the papers was called in the newspaper, the Capian Breeze, an enterprising Finn. And that was because he imported European wear, mainly ladies' wear, and he advertised in the Times, the Capian Breeze. So I'm thinking, okay, he advertised in the paper, and they put him on the front page and called him an enterprising Finn. I guess there may be some relation there. The other Finns didn't advertise. But he sold bonnets, kid gloves, corsets, 50-cent parasols, which is, I think they're cheaper now, hoop skirts and bustles. And he was at 141 Front Street, which I think they used to call Main Street Front Street, so it was 141 Main Street. And that was it. That was it. I mean, other than his advertisements, they didn't give him more articles. He put more ads in the paper. And 15 years later, they started talking about the Finns again. It was almost 1890. I'll read these to you. And by the way, I have about 10 copies if anybody wants to, at the end, they want a copy. October 22nd, 1886. Fatal accident at the Lanesville Granite Company. August Solek, a Finn, was crushed to death by a granite block. He left a widow and 2 children. And then the story is interesting because it reflects perhaps others than himself. He worked for this company in 1881. He went a couple years to California. He went 3 years back to Finland, and then he came back again to the Lanesville Granite Company for his rendezvous with destiny. Immigrant families basically were not necessarily stable, in part because of Susanna's research. I know that they rented, they didn't own, so it was easy for them to move. In fact, probably too easy because they get evicted, right? Somebody would say, I don't want anything to do with cardamom seeds and sauna stones. But anyway, the next article was May 11th, 1888. Deja vu, I call it. Fatal accident in Pigeon Cove. Starting to creep up from Lanesville all the way to Pigeon Cove. There was a blast, a fragment of granite flew and hit Michael Eliasson, a Finn, on the back of his head, and he died. He left a widow and 2 children. June of '88, there was a Finn wedding in Pigeon Cove. I think there were plenty of weddings, but they didn't get into the Times, so I don't know what made these people. They didn't put the names either. December 20th, 1888, a little Finland boy, 7 or 8, playing on the ice in one of the, spoken like a mother, in one of the Lanesville Granite Company quarry pits fell through. His shouts for assistance were heard, and workmen nearby hastened to toss him a rope, hauled him up, and took him to a house nearby. By 1889, things are hopping. March 11th, 1889, a drunken Finn belonging to Pigeon Cove was prevented from staggering in front of the 11 o'clock train Saturday evening by Officer Moulton. His escape from being run over was a narrow one. June 3rd, 1889. This is exact verbatim quote. A Rockport Finn from Pigeon Cove with an unpronounceable name.
That's great.
Who could not speak English was fined $3 and costs for disturbing the peace. And lastly, because the 1890s will be covered by Rob, this is the last one. December 10th, 1889, page 1, found wandering in the dock. Quote, Angus Lane and Harry Schultz found a man wandering around in the dock near Ashley's blacksmith shop last evening in an apparently crazed condition. Already sounds like, anyway. He was taken to the police station but failed to give any account of himself. I suppose he was propped up and said, give an account of yourself. He wouldn't answer any questions. He is supposed to be a Russian Finn from Pigeon Cove. And to have wandered into the dock while intoxicated. And that's it for the 1880s. Film at 11.
Happy Finnish Independence Day to everyone. I'm going to, as Wayne suggested, I'm going to talk about the Finnish here in Finns of Cape Ann from 1890 to 1899. And I think as you listen to the story, the story is really an immigrant story, okay? So ours is the immigrant story, Finnish version, because you'll see a lot of overlap and commonality. And poverty is certainly one of them. In the 1880s, before Finland was a free country, Russia tightened its rule. Russia disbanded the Finnish army and replaced it with Russian soldiers stationed in Finland. Young Finnish men were mandated to serve, but outside Finland. They faced up to 18 years of active and reserved duty, service. Many of the young men feared they would be used as expendable frontline infantry. Put the Finns there first. The fears appear again and again in the letters that survive from that period. This one is from a young man in Ostrobothnia. Dear brother, the Russians have taken 2 boys from Ilmajoki today, and we hear that they will come to Listero next. If my name is called, I will be gone for years, maybe forever. I would rather risk the ocean than march in the Tsar's uniform. Better to leave now than wait for the officers to seize me as they seized our friends. So this is prominent in their thoughts. At the same time, Western Finland suffered crop failures, and in 1891 and 92, especially in Ostrobothnia. Ostrobothnia is the breadbasket farming district and hardest hit region in the expansive Vasa province. The largest number of immigrants arrived in Cape Ann from Vasa. Names on the 1890s ship manifest included, for example, I can't name everyone, Lakso, Walima, Netti, Olila, Gangas, Givi, Soini, and Hautamäki. What about the numbers? We want to.
There's a little book I'd recommend to you that is free at the library called Finnish Immigrants in America, 1880-1920, and it's by a Swede, William Hoagland, Hoglund. And one of the merits of his book is what do you call it? Like a chart of where the Finns came from, and it may be hard except for the front row to see. But the black area is what Rob just mentioned, Vasa province. It's on the west coast, the Midwest, and it's the farming district that was so hard hit. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the figures, and all the figures are given for all of the provinces, half of the roughly 300,000 who came during that period of 1893 to 1920 in this chart, half of them came from Vasa. So if you have relatives in any part of the country, not just in Gloucester or Cape Ann, they probably came from Vasa. The odds are it's 50-50. You're pretty good. Thank you.
Thanks. Letters?
Well,
300,000.
in the 300,000 from this 1890s to 1920. Yeah. Essentially fleeing from Russia, not Finland. That stopped after 1920. Once it was independent, a lot of the flow stopped. They stayed in Finland.
Okay. Letters from America to Finland described ready jobs, higher wages, and freedom from conscription. These conditions sounded good. Granite Company's recruitment relied on labor and steamship agents, word of mouth, the letters, and the promise of work for strong men, whether or not they spoke English. The phrase Amerikkalainen kuume, or America fever, appears in Finnish accounts again and again. Departing the motherland took courage to cross a vast, unpredictable sea and to begin new lives in an unknown land and language. Sources tell us that these early 1890s explorers had little thought of returning to Finland. They were the ones, the explorers, they would just come. There are 3 words that non-Finns probably know from Finnish, and this is one of them, sisu. Sisu is a Finnish cultural concept meaning unyielding determination in the face of adversity. a mix of grit, courage, perseverance, inner strength, and steadfastness. Some say stubbornness. It is about continuing forward when the situation is hopeless, exhausting, or overwhelming, and doing so without complaint. These first-wave immigrants relied on sisu day after day. In one of the conferences I attended years ago, the speaker asked us to stand up, and we all did, and he put our hands up, okay, like this. And then he said, a little higher, and everyone did it, okay? So those are the Finns. They just keep going, and they keep going, and they just won't take no for an answer. The first wave of Finnish immigrants to Cape Ann in 1890 were almost all young Finnish-speaking men. New arrivals were pleased when occasionally Finnish-speaking John Peterson met them at the train station. Peterson, or a quarry official, would greet the young men, pin a tag with the name of the quarry they were assigned to, and move them by wagon to the appropriate quarry manager. Most were between 18 and 22, unmarried. Others were married but had come first alone. They lived in crowded boarding houses where sometimes 6 men, often more, shared a room. These unencumbered itinerants moved from quarry to quarry throughout New England, depending upon wages. A Finnish quarryman said, "We worked, slept, and worked again. If you had a bed to yourself, you were lucky." Another practice was there were different time periods for the people to work, okay, shifts. And so one person would have a bed, but then that person would go to work, and then someone would come home and use the bed. The boarding and rooming houses who took in the bachelors formed a safe haven for the men who were, for the most part, strangers to one another. They served as employment bureaus, language help centers, news exchanges, and social spaces for newcomers. Many immigrants arriving in Gloucester were directed to Isaac Lotso's Swanee boarding house in Lanesville, or in Pigeon Cove to the Kivy or Stone House, run by the Kivy family. Between 30 and 45 Finnish boarding and rooming houses operated in North Gloucester and in Rockport. The distinction is a rooming house is a person has a home with a couple of extra bedrooms and takes 2 people in, and they pay room and board. The boarding houses were made for that purpose. Among the early boarders between 1885 and 1897 were Peter Gronblad, William A. Erickson, Valentine Ranta, Andrew Peterson, Alexander Sari, and Matthew Hilden. Okay. Now, when wives and children arrived, they often stepped off trains carrying wooden trunks, Finnish hymn books, knitted socks, and salted fish. One jubilant Finnish quarryman said, "When the ship brought our wives and children, everyone in the house stopped work. It was a great day when a family was whole again." Let's see, while another expressed the feeling of the moment. "You could hear Finnish songs in the cove. The night a family arrived, it was a happy noise." The men built small plank wood-fired saunas. So can we say that? Sauna, like sauna, S-O-U-N-A. So if you know 3 words in Finnish, let's say pronounce it sauna. Sauna. And sisu. Okay, you'll be tested on the way out.
That's only 2. What's the third one?
Sibelius. But this was good.
Or Bertila.
So they built wood-fired saunas with heated granite stones behind the boarding houses. Toward the end of the decade and beyond, Finnish men constructed the sauna and other outbuildings first. Well, they were smart. Why? Because the sauna is the place where you can bathe and birth for some reason, or other reasons. Then they built another outbuilding to put all their tools in that they were going to use to renovate or build a home. And then the third would be the other stuff that goes along with construction. Renovating a rental or building a house would come later. Saturday night sauna smoke was so regular that neighbors joked that they could tell the day of the week by the wood smoke. A neighbor remarked, "If the Finns cannot outwork you, they will outsteam you." The trickle of Finnish immigrants soon surged, despite the economic downturn during the panic of 1893 here. Wives, children, siblings, parents, cousins rapidly followed, chain migration fashion, the first wave of settlers to establish a permanent community. You can jump in any time so I can...
Well, I'll tell the story. My father told me that the Finnish reverence for the sauna is so great that nobody goes to the sauna and is angry or violent or anything. All the negative and the evil is gone at the door of the sauna. So if a kid acted up or misbehaved and they were worried about being spanked, they hid in the sauna.
Oh, yeah, no, but the show it here.
Fred, what are you going to tell us? Where were you born? Where were you born?
When or where?
Where?
Jersey City, New Jersey.
Yeah. He was in the running, see? Okay.
It was because of the Depression. My dad, well, quickly I'll summarize it. Two of my uncles on my mother's side came from Montana for work in the East back in that era. And so they were working on the docks, building the docks on the around the New York, Jersey area. So when work was short around the Cape here, the folks went down to Jersey because my dad couldn't find enough to support a family here in the height of the Depression. So they get down, and my dad gets his interview with the dock master down there. He says, first thing he asked my dad, "Can you row a boat?" "Sure, I can row a boat." "All right, get down there." So they got in the boat. He had Dad row him out into the, which river is down there now that goes through there?
Hudson
Hudson.
River.
Yeah, no, the other
Trenton
one.
River.
Saddle River, maybe?
Anyway, he's out there. And so the foreman had him certain commands to put it here, put it there, and so forth. So what he did is he got a job as, with this company, dock building company, because he could row the boat and hold it steady. So his job then was to row out with a gentleman, another worker in the boat, out into the East River. Yeah, it's the East River. Yeah, and there they would lower down these huge pilings, and Dad would have to hold that boat steady while the worker reached up and guided that piling into where it belonged. Dad would be holding that boat. That was a pretty rugged fin, yes, definitely. But one time when they were doing this, they had one about halfway down or whatever, and all of a sudden they heard this yell, "Look out below!"
Oh, no.
Well, the cable, something broke and it took that skiff right in half. Both of them were already swimming for sure. That was that. But fortunately, after a couple of years and then working for another company, he came back. So I'm probably the oldest blow-in, as they say in Rockport. I'm the oldest blow-in at 2 years old. So.
Good for you. I'm glad. We're also interested, you had experiences in school in, I think you grew up, you said in Pigeon Cove.
Yeah.
And in Pigeon Cove, they had an elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
And you gotta tell us what that was. It's a one-room school, this is 1930s and 40s.
So I started, in fact, I started first grade just before they bombed Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
That's when I started first grade.
What was it like inside the school? One room for?
No. We had grades 1 1 and 2. There were 2 grades in each room.
2 grades in each room.
2 grades, yeah. I have a picture of my father in a 1-room schoolhouse, 1 through 8 in Pigeon Cove.
Well, you know, the Finns, you brought an artifact that I'd like you to be able to show. The Finns went to war with Russia invaded, and then the Finns went and defended themselves in 1939. And the Finns in this country, whether they were American citizens or had remained Finnish citizens, were intrigued to help in any way they could. Some of the boys volunteered, the women made items of clothing. And Fred has an example of this is from the real time, 1939. I think your mother, it was these things that your mother did.
Well, they're not, I'm not sure they're my mother's, but the women, the Finnish women in Pigeon Cove and Rockport, to help out the Finnish troops fighting Russian troops, they used to knit these mittens with a trigger finger. That's the trigger finger. And by the dozens, they would knit those and ship them to Finland for the troops. And the only other thing that they really requested to have sent along with the mittens, coffee.
Hey.
Yeah, don't we know it?
But this, my brother and I split these together. They were a pair, of course. But this was I forget which member of the family, but the family name is here, Kokkonen. We are, actually our Finnish name was Kokkonen. Kokko is, means bonfire, or Kokkonen, as my dad explained it, was keeper of the fire, translation. So that was the Kokkonens. Somehow the Finnish language, they like those sound of the K's or whatever. But because my mother's family were the Pakkalas, P-A-K-K-A-L-A. But my mother grew up in Red Rock, Montana. And my father grew up in Pigeon Cove. If you want to hear the story, you can read it. It's in the Gloucester 400.
Edwin, are you ready yet for your prime time?
Just about waking up. You all know me, I'm Edwin Erickson, born in Lanesville, 63 Langsford Street on July 16, 1926. I'm 99.
Hey!
That was a good year. This is a hard year, a little bit harder. So I will start from the beginning. It's always hard to start from the middle. What did I just say? Did I tell them I was born?
Yes, you did.
I don't know.
And you were working for 5 cents.
When I was 6 years old, I went across the street, Emo Rancher, Home Rancher's Market. I did a few little jobs and he paid me 5 cents. Good money at that time for me. Then I went to grammar school. I spent 8 years at Lane School, which is now the parking lot of the Lutheran Church. Then I was supposed to go to Dale Avenue to high school, but that one is apartments, so they had built a new high school, and I spent my 4 years there. Then when I did that, then by God, there's a war. I was drafted into the Army, and I was sent to, well, Fort Dix first, and then down to Camp Landing in Florida for training, then Camp Rucker in Alabama, advanced training, because we were supposed to go fight the Japanese. But just as I finished at Alabama, the war ended, they dropped a bomb. So, if they didn't, I wouldn't be here. They figured at least 1 million people would die in that war. Because you're fighting everybody. Not only the kids and all.
Now
It had been a bad war.
you then could go anywhere you wanted. Where'd you go?
So, where'd I go? I went home. I got to remember where I am now.
You're going to go to Randa's store.
Well, where am I going?
Well, lobstering in Ranta's
Oh,
store.
wait a minute, I don't know where I learned it all. But anyway, I went to Lane School, 8 years, it's now the Roosevelt parking lot.
No matter how far we
Then
travel.
I went to high school, that's the new high school, because Dale Avenue was apartments at that time. I finished that and I was drafted into the Army. I went to Camp Blanding in Florida for training. Then I went to Camp Rocker in Alabama, advanced training. Oh, I told him all about that. I remember them all now. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today. Neither would a lot of people. I'm here today. Now where am I? I just dropped the bomb.
You're just back in Gloucester after that.
Where am I?
Back in Gloucester.
Ranta's Market.
Oh, yeah, I was in Camp Landing. Then they sent me to California, then San Diego, where we were shipped over to the Philippines. And we got to the Philippines, they had, 80,000 Japanese prisoners. And we had to stockade and we had to guard them. We didn't guard the prisoners, we guarded the Filipinos from going at the prisoners. They didn't like them. So anyway, then I was there until they shipped the 80,000 over back to Japan. Then they put us on MP duty. Sometime I had to, old tires, they're in the sticks. And I had to guard them. Nobody gonna say toes. Oh, my old tires. I don't know. And I didn't even know if they're gonna find me where they left me off. But they did, they found me. And then well, one good thing about being an MP, the cafeteria is always open. Good food, good pastry. That's the best thing for me. And there were so many of us that we only worked 4 hours a week. That was a lot. I said 4 hours, and then the rest we could go into the Philippines, go wherever, do whatever we want.
We ask questions?
The audience is able to ask you questions. They're fascinated and happy with what you said. The audience will be asking you some questions. Susanna may have a question. Susanna.
Okay, this is
You can
to.
tell me what they say.
Oh, yeah, I'll tell you.
You can.
I'll yell it.
So in your childhood, I imagine you had to do chores, but you also wanted to play. So what was that like? Did you try to get out of your chores? Did you play ring relievo? I mean, give me a picture.
Well, what was your work play like? You sometimes worked and you sometimes played, or did you work?
Yeah, when you're a kid.
No, I mean, well, work 4 hours guarding something that and then the rest of the time we wait.
When you were a kid in Lanesville, did you play or work or both?
When I was a kid, I didn't do much of anything. I went to school.
Okay.
And what did I do? I went to
High
school, then high school.
Edwin.
And then I was drafted into the Army.
Edwin.
I told them that before.
Edwin, you had a wonderful story you told one time. You went to school and they asked you your name. You remember your story where you went to school and the teacher asked you your name? That was sort of a test that you were proud of?
Well, I sure, when you remembered my name and I could come home and tell you, I remembered my name. Edwin Rudolph Erickson. Now, that's a long name.
You did it.
I remember it.
You passed that test.
I was only 6 years old, but I didn't get it. I couldn't
When,
spell it.
when you went to work, you did lobstering and you worked at Ranta's store. Tell us about that.
I worked in the store for, I don't know, a long time.
30 years anyway.
38 maybe.
Yeah.
And I was lobstering that time and back and forth. I started with 50 traps and then I ended up with 150, full by hand.
All by hand.
That's why I'm here today.
Yeah, exactly why you're here.
I did painting houses. I must have painted 40 houses through Lanesville, Bayview, and Rockport.
Yeah.
So I always busy. I had more lawn jobs, at least 8 of them. Do the lawns, all the yard work. I was always busy.
Uncle
I'm,
Edward, tell them about the cows.
the cows,
Tell them about the
tell
cows.
about the
Well,
cows.
we used to go to Nicola's cows, had to be taken to pasture, and we take them from Nicolene Way, that's where that, well, right where the Wayno Hall used to be.
Yeah.
Back there. They have 5 cows, and me and Rabbit used to, and Edwin Nicola, we used to drive them all the way to Folly Cove, and then there's a road just before the Folly Cove, Rockport sign, Fishing Cove. There's a road that goes up to the pastures, and probably another 3/4 of a mile. I mean, that was a long walk.
Yeah.
Hey, but we took him up there in the pasture, and then around 4 o'clock, we'd go up there and bring him back. But actually, they didn't need us. I mean, the cow had a bell and tell the lead cow, boom. He knows where to go. And you know, it's time when he's full, he's going to come back. I think that's it, let's do it. And then what did we do? Oh yeah, I mean, we were paid with shoes.
You made a shoe.
Yeah. We tried them on Arubente. He had a shoe store. Nice shoes, nice and black and nice, fit good. But don't go out in the rain. The soles were cowboys. First cowboy.
What do you remember of Waynola Hall? Waynola Hall.
Waynola Hall? Oh, I can remember Waynola Hall because they used to have a lot of dances and all kinds of different things going on all the time. And we used to go there and watch, and there'd be dancing and basketball game and all that. So what I did when I was a teenager, I went to the Finnish Society and asked them if I could have the use of the hall for the kids. So they gave me the key, and I could open the door as long as the kids could all come and play. There's basketball, card games, almost anything you want to do, boxing, whatever. But as long as I'm there, okay. But when I left, I have to lock the doors. So that worked, and nobody quarreled about it. It was fine. So we had it for those 4 years until I went in the service, and then I turned the key back.
You had a Pearl Harbor story. When the news of Pearl Harbor came on December 7th, which was a Sunday.
My dad was a classical music fan of in those days. He had a Stromberg Carlson radio that was floor model with a dial big as some of the TVs, early TVs. And the news break came over, and Uncle Al and Phyllis and Audrey and family upstairs came down, and his dad had the best radio. So there's all the announcement about the bombing of the Pearl Harbor and everything. So finally somebody looked around, where's Freddie?
We're looking for Fred on Pearl Harbor Day.
Right.
Where was Fred?
Where was Fred? At the dining room window, looking, I was on guard duty already. I was on guard duty. You're 5 years old, I mean, I'm on guard duty.
He's on.
The hill tonight or whatever.
He's watching in case we're going to be invaded.
Well, my mother, I can remember her coming over and just telling me that, no, this is thousands of miles away and all that. But that's my memory of hearing the announcement on the radio of Pearl Harbor. Yeah.
But thank you for attending. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Mut Mutta sitten kun mentiin metsäkämpille, savon kielikin kuulosti jo jänkille. Kun porilainen alkoi siellä soveltaa ja savolainen pieltä vaan komentaa.